It was at the end of the year, however, and with the release of Chronicles Volume 1, that the glare of the media spotlight fell upon Dylan in a more intense fashion. This enigmatic and intimate autobiography was a phenomenon, universally acclaimed by the critics, spending 19 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list and nominated for a National Book Critics Circle Award.
It's obviously Dylan's voice. I mean, that ain't ghostwritten. I mean, he may have had some help in the research, and there may have been somebody saying, actually, you know, I think Bob, you find that album came out this year or whatever. But I mean, it's undeniably Dylan's voice. I mean, those imaginative leaps in that book could only have come from Dylan. Those turns of phrases could only be Dylan's. And of course, because of the episodic nature of the book, I mean, there's at least 2 more volumes I think he's contracted to do. And I get the feeling he quite likes him, and the reviews have been unanimously good. I mean, finally, at pensionable age, the old chap's got a new career. So, I mean, you know, I'd like to think he'd just, I mean, in a sense, I'd be happy if he actually gave up performing and concentrated more on the writing. I think he really has found a new string to his bow, and I'd love to see more of that sort of stuff.
New York City, the city that would come to shape my destiny. Modern Gomorrah. I was at the initiation point of square one, but in no sense a neophyte. When I arrived, it was dead-on winter. The cold was brutal and every artery of the city was snow-packed. But I'd started out from the frost-bitten North Country, a little corner of the earth where the dark frozen woods and icy roads didn't faze me. I didn't know a single soul in this dark freezing metropolis, but that was all about to change, and quick.
I think it showed us that Dylan was a creative, artistic genius, and I mean, we knew that from his music, but you know, you look at his films and it seemed that music was his thing. He actually showed us in Chronicles that he was also a brilliant writer. You know, I would have no hesitation in saying it is the best written book about music that I've ever read. He doesn't tell us a whole, well, he does tell us a lot about himself, but he still at the same time, you know, manages to keep the mystique intact. To me, the most impressive thing about the book is the way he writes about music and the way he writes about other musicians and the way he describes the impact that hearing Woody Guthrie for the first time had on him. Or Robert Johnson. I think he says something like, first time he heard Robert Johnson, it was like an anchor dropping into the harbour. Just sort of this wonderful use of metaphor. And, you know, I'm someone who's made my living out of writing about music because I wasn't good enough to make music. And so it's a little bit galling for Dylan to come along with this book. He's already made a very good career out of making music. Now he can write better about music than I can, or, you know, with all due respect to my colleagues, any of us. It's the best book about music I've ever read.
What I was going to do as soon as I left home was just call myself Robert Allen. As far as I was concerned, that was who I was. That's what my parents named me. It sounded like the name of a Scottish king, and I liked it. Sometime later, I'd seen some poems by Dylan Thomas. Dylan and Allen sounded similar. Robert Dylan, Robert Allen. I couldn't decide. The letter D came on stronger, but Robert Dylan didn't look or sound as good as Robert Allen. People always called me either Robert or Bobby, but Bobby Dylan sounded too skittish to me. Bob Dylan looked and sounded better than Bob Allen. The first time I was asked my name in the Twin Cities, I instinctively and automatically, without thinking, simply said, Bob Dylan.
Chronicles is great. Chronicles is Chronicle is for books what his songwriting was for songwriting 40 years ago. I love the prose. The prose is wonderful. A book it reminds me of a little bit is a novel I like by a black novel. It's called Ishmael Reed, named Mumbo Jumbo, that came out about 30 years ago. It has the same quality. You know this guy is very smart and really knows a lot about language, and you also know that he doesn't care at all about what you think is the proper way to put words together. how one punctuates, how one orders. He's going to interest you doing it exactly the way he does, and you can't tell whether this is an extremely canny and thought out, strategized structure, or if he just came up with it on the John. You cannot tell. And I love that quality about it. I love its casualness, its apparent casualness. As I say, I don't have any idea whether it was or wasn't casual. I have no idea whether he thought he was doing this. None.
And the clamour around Dylan continued. After having been such an outsider within mainstream media in the 80s and early 90s, the celebration of his career now spread across the press, and his position in the new millennium as the elder statesman of rock seemed undeniable. In 2005, the documentary No Direction Home was broadcast, a penetrating re-evaluation of Dylan's career until 1966, produced by Martin Scorsese and featuring a new and lengthy interview with its subject.
No Direction Home was very compelling and very beautiful. Again, it probably revealed less than people hoped it would or thought it might, but there still were things about it that were just so redolent of that great, great period of, you know, Dylan through 1966. I mean, talk about, I mean, there's just no missteps. Everything's great. It's all great. And you have Dylan, it's just interesting to hear Dylan speak at such length. You know, you realize just how infrequently you'd heard that voice just talking.
The answer is blowing in the wind.
I didn't really know if that song was good or bad, or it just felt right. But I didn't really know that it had any kind of anthemic quality or anything.
How many years must a mountain exist before it is washed to the sea?
I wrote the songs to perform the songs, and I needed to sing in that language, which is a language that I hadn't heard before.
The answer, my friend, is a blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
The interesting thing about No Direction Home is how closely Dylan was actually in control of that project, which suggests to me that contrary to all of the impressions he tries to give, he has reached a point in his life where he is deeply interested, not in his image, that's the wrong word, perhaps not even in his own myth, you know, and of course he has talked about the decades he spent trying to run away from the myth of being Bob Dylan, but he's certainly very interested in how Bob Dylan will be perceived by posterity. And so this isn't really Martin Scorsese's take on Bob Dylan's life. It's Bob Dylan's take on Bob Dylan's early life. You know, all of those interviews were conducted by his own manager, so they had total control of that material. And there's nothing wrong with that, and I'm not suggesting that that in any way diminishes the importance or the truthfulness of No Direction Home as a film. But what is interesting is that it tells us Dylan is now very, very interested in how he's going to be perceived by posterity. No Direction Home is as much Dylan's presentation of himself. It's as much an autobiography as Chronicles Volume 1, quite honestly.
I mean, I just about had it, though. I'd had it with the whole scene. And I was, whether I knew it or didn't know it, I was looking to just quit for a while.
Well, what about the scene? What did you had it with? What about the scene where you're sick of?
Well, you know, people like you, people like, you know, like just, you know, like just being pressed and hammered and, you know, expected to answer questions. You know, like, what can you know, like, there's enough to make anybody sick, really.
In both these works, this is Dylan opening up and telling you the truth. It's not. It's just one more mirror in the hall of mirrors that has been his entire public life. Because you really don't know what's going on. I mean, in the one case, I mean, in both cases, though, it seems to me what is clear, what I do feel, and what I would have to say, if I can identify things as genuine and authentic, one gets the sense he was a notoriously nasty young man, right? Yes, he had his good side, but he was mean to a lot of people. He cut a lot of people off, betrayed his friends or abandoned his friends. That's pretty well established. In both works, he's definitely trying to make it up to those people. One reason Paul Nelson is in that record, he approved everything, man. In No Direction Home, is that he knew he stole Paul Nelson's record, and that was a really mean thing to do. And now Paul Nelson is a has-been, and he's going to put him in this movie. Say thank you, Paul. Well, I think that's good. Good for you. I mean, there's I can't remember which song it is on the new record, but he talks about having, you know, regrets he has about things he did to his friends in so many words, and I take that line literally. I believe it's true.